In this file handling tutorial, we will be discussing about this fread function, which is a C standard library function. It is used for reading the binary data from the file stream and to store that in the computer memory. In the previous tutorials, we have discussed about the fwrite function, which is used for writing the data to the file in binary form. So if we have a variable, let us say x of type integer, if it contains any value, then we can write the data of that variable x just like the way it is stored in the memory in binary form to the file. So here we're going to be using this particular function in order to read those kind of data stored in the file back into the variable or into the computer memory. Now, if we talk about the syntax, name is fread, and then as the first parameter, we have to specify the memory location where we want to store the read value. As the second parameter, we have to specify the size of single individual element, and then we have to specify how many elements that we want to read, and then we have to specify the file stream from which we want to read the data. Now, as the return value, this function returns the number of elements it has successfully read from the file. Now, one thing to remember is the return value is not about the number of bytes read, it's about the number of elements that are read, and each element will be of the size specified as the second parameter. So now here, in order to explain this, what I have done is I have used the program that we have used for fwrite. So what we are doing is we have a variable called as x and it contains the value 65, and then we are using this fwrite function in order to write this data to the file in binary form. So whatever the value that is stored in this variable x in computer memory, it will be stored in the file in that exact same way. It will be in the form of zeros and ones. Now after that, what we do is we will use the fread function and we will read that data from the file and we will store that in another variable. Let us say the variable called as y, and I will declare this variable and I will initialize this variable y with a value of 0. So now here what I'm doing is the fwrite function actually return the data to a file called as number_binary.bin. So here we will be reading the data from this number_binary.bin, and we are opening the file in read mode and as a binary file. If the file is not opened, then we are displaying the error message. And after that, what we can do is we can use this fread function and we can read the value. So it will be fread. Now the first parameter is where we want to store the read value. We want to store that value in the memory pointed by this variable y. Or in other words, I can say I want to store the read value for this variable y. So here I have to specify the memory address of this variable y. So I will write ampersand and then the variable name y. So the first argument is in memory where we want to store. So we need to get the memory address of this variable y, and then the size of the single element that we want to read. So here we know that we have written the value of this variable x of type integer. So the size of this particular element is integer. So I can say size of and then int, and then how many elements that we want to read. In this example, we want to read only one value. So we will specify it as 1. And then from which file stream we want to read that value. Here we're going to specify that using this file pointer fp. If you want, you guys can store the return value of this fread and you can compare it with the number of elements that you wanted to read. In that way, you can say whether this function has read the expected values or not. You guys can do that. And after that, we are closing this file, and then we are just displaying the value of this variable x and y. Now here, remember, after writing the data to this file, we are using the fclose function in order to close the file, and then we are reopening that file for reading purpose. Okay. Now what I will do is I will save this program and I will build and run this. We will get x is 65 and y is 65. So if you remember, initially I initialized this variable y with a value of 0. So we are writing the value of this variable x to the file in binary form, and then we are reading that data and we are storing that for this variable y. So now here the both x and y variables are displaying the value of 65. It means we have successfully returned the data to the file and we have successfully read the data from the file. So if you want, I can open up this number_binary.bin file, and this text editor will try to interpret it as the text file. So it will kind of display something like this. Now here, if you want, you can check the return value of this fwrite function in order to check whether this function has successfully read the number of elements or number of values that you wanted to read. For example, here, if the return value is not equal to the value that you have specified for this number of elements that you wanted to read, then you can kind of say like, okay, whatever the value that we were expected to read, this function was unable to read that, and depending on that, you can take some other action. So here, for this particular tutorial, this is enough. If you like it, then hit the like button. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button. If you have anything to say, write that in the comment box. For more tutorials, subscribe to the channel.